Are you tired of the same old streaming options? Introducing Myco, the revolutionary Web3 content platform where you can not only watch films, TV shows, user-generated content, live events, and listen to podcasts, but earn from them too. Myco commissions and produces content that connects and empowers both viewers and creators in a fully decentralized video ecosystem. With live monetization, crowdfunding, NFT gating, and even the opportunity for fractional ownership of content, Myco is changing the game. Myco, join the conversation and start earning today. Download the app from the Apple and Google Play app stores.
TellyCast, the TV industry news review.
Hi, I'm Justin Crosby, and welcome to another TellyCast. On this week's show, Seniha Tunaboylu, Head of Content and Acquisitions at Viasat World, joins me with Nicola Soderlund, Managing Partner at Eccho Rights. Peter White from Deadline joins us with the latest Hollywood TV industry news. And this week, K7 Media's Girts Licis goes in search of Eastern Promise. It's all coming up on this week's TellyCast. So joining me on this week's show are two key buyers and sellers of international TV content. Seniha Tunaboylu is Head of Content and Acquisitions of Viasat World. Seniha leads the team which fuels the pipeline of content for the company's 24 pay TV channels and on-demand services, now available across 3 continents. And joining Seniha is Nicola Soderlund. Nicola is Managing Director at Eccho Rights. Nicola founded Eccho Rights with Fredrik af Malmborg in 2004, and the company is now a leading independent distributor of international television series and formats, with offices in Stockholm, Istanbul, Madrid, and Seoul. So, welcome to the show, Seniha and Nicola.
Thank you.
Hi, Justin.
Thanks for joining us, guys. Really looking forward to having a good old chat on this week's show. Seniha, coming to you first. So I've been looking at Viasat World's website, and there's obviously some really impressive brands and stats on there. Your channel and SVOD portfolio spans factual, entertainment, drama, film, and sports, with over 171 million subscribers, which I was really surprised about. I mean, obviously, we know about Viasat. The profile is higher in different territories around the world. Can you give us a bit of a background on where Viasat is biggest and where your core markets are?
Mm-hmm. So our core markets are in Russia, where we have premium and basic movie channels and sports. In terms of our factual portfolio, our biggest markets, Poland, generally Central and Eastern Europe, Czech, Hungary. We also go across Nordics, Turkey, Greece, Russia CIS for the factual channels as well. And we also have a scripted period drama channel that goes across Central and Eastern Europe, Turkey and Greece.
And obviously the pandemic is going to be having a different effect across your wide portfolio of channels, obviously, because some are sport, obviously, some and drama, and we've talked about unscripted and production and the challenges that we've been facing as an industry across those genres. How has the pandemic affected your role and how things have developed over the last 3 months for Viasat?
We've had to obviously embrace new ways of working. I think as a company, we reacted really well in that we were set up to work from home as the whole company and set up via Microsoft Teams. I think that's really worked well for us. So it's been pretty much business as usual in that respect. Obviously, our commercial teams have been in touch with the operators to try and answer their questions and make our channels more accessible in the early days to more of an audience. So it's been different in different departments. Certainly for my department, it was just before MIP TV, and we'd already made plans. Our flights were booked, our accommodation was booked, our meetings were in our calendars. So the most obvious thing to do was to keep those meetings, but do them via Zoom or Microsoft Teams.
How did that work?
It worked really well. We obviously rescheduled some of them, so it meant that we weren't running around like crazy like we usually do around the Palais. So it was definitely a lot better for our feet. And it meant that we didn't need to keep to a 30-minute schedule. So if there was more to discuss, then we were able to do that. And as a result of those meetings, we actually, since I calculated yesterday, since the lockdown across our factual portfolio and for epic drama, we actually pushed through more than 400 hours for our internal editorial process.
So that's acquisitions, 400 hours of acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, we mainly an acquisitions-based aggregator of content. So we tend to pre-buy at a really early stage for the factual and epic drama channel. But overall, we are majority of our content is acquisitions-based. So as soon as lockdown became in effect, the first thing we looked at was our production delivery timelines, obviously. And this impacted some channels more than others because we pre-buy more for some of the channels than others. But because we buy up to 12 months ahead, we didn't really feel the pressure. So most of our content was already secured for 2020. So it just meant that we had to keep an eye on and be a bit pessimistic, I think, in our analysis of where we thought things were going to come in. So we did a quick analysis per channel. We obviously, for our Viasat History channel, we pre-buy quite a lot of content from European distributors and producers from France and Germany. And they were the first to go into lockdown. We had a look at that, made some pessimistic guesses as to when we thought they were going to come in.
Yeah.
Obviously, it meant that we had to be a bit more diligent with delivery updates. Our partners have been really amazing in this. They've been very transparent and open. It's been a partnership. So I think the understanding was that as long as we had the information, we could find a solution, but we really needed to be quite open about when we thought things were going to come in.
Yeah. So you acquired 400 hours in the time, probably since MIP TV.
We had accrued. Some of those are still in progress.
Right.
So we haven't quite closed all the deals.
So how has it affected your buying pattern, what you buy? Have you really pivoted more to buying finished and ready-to-air content?
Like I said, because we're quite far in advance, and for some of the channels, we have more returning franchises than others. Like for our male-skewed channel, Viasat Explore, and our epic drama scripted channel, we have quite a lot of returning franchises. So we've had to really see when they were going to come in and calculate for any delays in those, because we anticipate that's where we'll feel the most impact, where they'll be in drama, obviously, because they take longer to produce, and also in the male skewed channel, where we acquire quite a lot of Men at Work series, where those returning franchises probably wouldn't come in at our expected timeframes, which tends to fall at the same time each year. So we've had to look at those and make some adjustments accordingly, where we looked at some ready-made stuff.
Right.
And I think for epic drama, we've looked at buying more ready-made new franchises that we haven't had, but, they were likely.
Okay.
Having said that, we'd already identified some new franchises that were already produced that are going into second season.
Just push them over the line, basically.
Exactly. So we were able to secure those. I don't think our highlights this year is going to be affected too much. It will probably be further down the line.
Yeah.
Next year. So
first quarter of next year.
Exactly. So we've made adjustments to alleviate those.
All right. Well, we'll talk a little bit about how that buying and selling process may develop a little bit later. Nicola, thanks for joining us from holiday. You're actually in Italy, so I'm delighted that you've prioritized TellyCast over your holiday today.
Why shouldn't I?
Exactly.
Thanks for inviting me. I am in Italy, in the south of Italy, yes, and enjoying my holiday, but it's always nice to be on the TellyCast, of course.
Excellent. Oh, well, that's the right answer. Thank you, Nicola. I think everybody's familiar with Eccho, right? Certainly I am. Always used to seeing Eccho Rights on, I can't remember what level of the Palais it is, the bright yellow stand that you have.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
On the third floor, if you just walk the stairs up,
That's
you'll
right.
find us.
Yeah. So Eccho Rights has a really interesting story in the sense that it's been built up in part due to your role in establishing Turkish drama as an international phenomenon. Can you tell us about that, how that came about?
So it's in a way a long story, but my background was as a producer, and I wanted to expand the international side of the business. So me and my partner Fredrik Malmborg, we created a network of independent producers called Sparks Network, which was an exclusive club for these producers that wanted to change ideas, the best practices, and everything, which was fantastic. It was really, really very, very interesting to have all these producers just, being open to each other, because they were not competitors in that group. They were colleagues because they were only representing their own countries. The Turkish company in Sparks Network came to us one day, IAPIN, with a series. They said, this series is very, very successful in the home territory. Do you want to have a look at it and see if you can sell it internationally? And, we looked at each other and said, wow, what is this? Turkish drama. We are Swedish people. We don't know, what is that? We looked at it and we found out that the content was really good. It was a remake of Monte Cristo, the Count of Monte Cristo. The production value was there. The actors looked smashing,
Right.
And it was really, really well made. So we said, okay.
And how long had this been running?
For a couple of months or half a year or something like that already.
Oh, okay.
And then we said, okay, let's try. And that series, we have sold to 150 countries.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was amazing. So we were part of this Turkish drama wave that came out, that sold Turkish series across the world. So we are part of that, and it's been our bread and butter for many years now, and it's really been very, very successful for us, I must say. We sell a lot to Latin America, to Eastern Europe, etc., and now also in Asia and across the world, basically. And even in Sweden, we sell it, to SVT.
Yeah,
it's running for the fifth season now.
What was the moment that you realized that there was an international market for it? Obviously, when you saw it, it looked fantastic. But what was the sale that you made? What was the territory that came on board that signaled to you that this was going to be a global hit?
Middle East.
Right.
Yeah, we sold it to the Middle East. That was a big, commission. It was nice license fee to it. And then it just spread automatically all over the world. So it was not one defining moment, but I remember very much that sales.
Okay. Is there a similarity within Turkish drama to perhaps like telenovelas in Latin America? Is there a similar kind of cultural connection there? Or?
Yeah, in a way there is, because, obviously, as I said, Turkish dramas, they work very well in Eastern Europe, which also the telenovelas did, and it also works very well in South America. The producers there, they complained to us. They said, we can't sell our shows anymore because all the broadcasters only want Turkish drama. There are similarities, cultural similarities, which make them work very well. It's very much about family values, dilemmas, revenge stories, things like that. But the Turkish dramas, I must say, are done on the production value is higher, which made them, very, very competitive in those markets.
Presumably, there's been a production shutdown in Turkey as well. How are you expecting that to affect that pipeline?
They start to produce again now, like a couple of weeks ago, and they will start to do that again now.
Okay. So you had about a 3-month pause, essentially.
Yes, 3 months pause, more or less, which hasn't affected us so much because we have a huge catalog already, of series. So we haven't been that affected by the corona as I think many others who are more dependent on new series all the time because we have the catalog. And also, we are in Sweden, and we've had a more relaxed attitude towards this crisis.
Yes, you have, markedly, which is
good or not, I don't know. Let's find out later when we evaluate the whole thing. Anyway, but that means that some of the shows that we represent from Sweden, like Honor, there is a new Camilla Läckberg series that we represent that we'll take out soon. They've been recording all the time,
right?
So and so we will have 3 or 4 new series to launch for the fall already, when everybody's still waiting, for the new content to be ready, because it will take a while before in post and everything, record and post, etc., etc.
Yeah.
hopefully we'll have an advantage there.
Well, I hope so. The other interesting thing about Eccho Rights is that it's part of CJ E&M, which is one of Asia's largest media and entertainment companies. How did that come about, and how are you capitalizing on the Korean format boom?
When we realized the power of the Turkish drama series, we said we were looking what could be the next Turkey, which country could be the next provider that has been undersold, and as you said, in Southeast Asia, the Korean series are totally dominating the market, and I mean the stars there are huge, and they pay very, very hefty license fees for their top series. So we went there a couple of times, and to these markets there, local markets there, and start to acquaintance all these producers and TV stations, and then we got to know CJ, and then we started representing some of their formats, and this kind of organically grew to something that maybe we should do something together, a joint venture or something, and it ended up with them buying the majority stake of our company. So it was more of curiosity, based of curiosity, that we thought. I mean, the Korean series are fantastic. I must say that the writing it has something which makes it feels a bit more original. There is something like a different approach to the storytelling, which I find really interesting, and they feel very fresh. We will announce a couple of scripted deals the coming week, I hope, France and in Italy and etc. So we have put a lot of effort in selling Korean formats, because still the ready-made is quite a hard sell. It's a bit of a culture barrier. The Asian style of acting, etc., doesn't really fit. I mean, the European audience is not really used to it yet. I think they will, because once you get over it, you understand how it works. But the formats are much easier to sell and to adapt into the European style.
Yeah, and it's drama formats, isn't it, that you're focusing on? South Korean
drama formats, exactly.
As opposed to entertainment.
Yes, we don't do entertainment formats anymore. We only do drama. We have to focus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seniha, your story of the week is picking up on the story that we broke on TellyCast last week about MIPCOM's hybrid approach this October. Talk us through that.
Everyone's been speculating in the industry, watching to see what's going to happen with MIPCOM, because we've been wondering about whether MIP TV was going to come to a natural end for a while now, and the fact that it got cancelled this time and then we went into lockdown. Obviously, it's quite a big event for all of us. It's been interesting to see how they've announced the changes to it. It's really interesting. And obviously, a lot of thought has gone into it, and the auditing process for what's been proposed is really interesting. But ultimately, I wanted to just unpack it a bit more, because of course we need to support each other and end up in a situation where we can go back to attending markets again. I wonder if it's still a bit too soon to be attending. Certainly, if there's not going to be any producers or distributors or buyers coming from Latin America or US, or, for us, the most relevant ones are Canadian producers and distributors, Australians. And if they don't come, then I wonder if it's really worthwhile to go. And also, if it's going to be a hybrid market where sessions are going to be online, actually, that's probably the most appealing thing for me, because our schedules are always so full that we hardly ever go to any of the sessions or the panels or the keynotes. So actually, if they do make those online, this might be the first chance we get at, listening to those. But in terms of the meetings, we've found, we've been attending quite a few virtual events so far in markets. We've just done Sunnyside, we've done Banff, we've done some digital screenings. Last week there was one on series set up in France where, you listen to pitches, you see clips. Those are working really well. And also, we're quite a big team. So not all of us would actually go to the markets. We would always alternate. So maybe half the team would go to one market, the other half goes to the other market. In this way, with the virtual markets, it means that the whole team can participate. It's more cost efficient. It's then more productive because we can process and get through a lot of the information and evaluate a lot more. I personally really miss the face-to-face, as I'm sure do most of us. And I do feel that's an integral part of our whole industry makeup. Those natural conversations that you tend to have over lunch or, just when you bump into each other. It's those that don't happen organically when you're having these virtual markets or virtual meetings. It does still show that you can get through and carry on business as usual with what's available for now. And I think maybe that's the key. Maybe we just carry on as we are for now. I think ultimately we all anticipate things will change after the lockdown. For MIPCOM, we as a company haven't made the decision whether we'll go or not yet. We actually still all working from home now. So I feel it's a bit premature to make a decision like that when we're having to travel as well, because all business travel has been suspended for now. And I think MIPCOM will probably be too soon. It will be interesting to see who actually participates.
How many events did Viasat World attend on the calendar, roughly?
Probably about six to eight.
Yeah.
The biggest ones for us and the most relevant ones for us is Real Screen.
Right.
This Real Screen Summit that takes place in January and MIPCOM. But, we have found that the smaller markets and the more focused markets, such as Sunnyside and Le Rendezvous and NatP East, also really works for us. I don't think we've felt the whole of not attending a market.
So the chances are that you'll probably be attending less markets over the next year, and you're still going to wait and see in terms of how the business approaches MIPCOM.
Yes.
Okay. How about you, Nicola? Have you made any decisions on MIPCOM yet?
No, we haven't taken that decision. I think, like everybody else, we'll be waiting to see who will attend. So
yeah,
it's a wait-and-see game. And let's see what happens. I mean, as Seniha said, that, we've gotten used to working another way. And that works really well, also for us. You miss the face-to-face meeting. And I think it is very important to get this kind of personal contact if you make a deal, because our business is very much about trust, isn't it? On a Zoom meeting or whatever, you don't get that so close in that sense, so that you really get to know the person. So I think face-to-face is still very important. But let's see. We don't know.
Just coming back to what we were talking a little bit earlier, Seniha, on that shortage of content that we're expecting maybe to come through to have an effect. Or some people have said that actually around October is when they're going to start really seeing that, feeling that effect. And you're saying maybe into next year. You're obviously making plans for that. What do those plans look like? How are you going to deal with that shortage of fresh content in the first couple of months of next year, for example?
We've already looked at that, because one of the downfalls of going across so many territories is having to language in almost 30 languages. So our languaging timelines are about 3 months, which means marketing on air and off air campaigns need to be locked down. Schedules need to be released at least 3 months ahead. Like I said, we've pretty much closed off this year with stuff that we're sure are coming in. Also for next year as well. So Q1 and Q2, we've brought forward shows that we anticipated coming in later. Some of those are delivering earlier. Because of Canadian funding cycle, they're already in post-production. So we've managed to shift those into Q1.
Yeah.
Because we have quite a varied portfolio, we have to take it per channel. So for Viasat History, where we had quite a lot of content in production, which might be being pushed back, we've actually acquired some off-the-shelf content which we know have already delivered. So we don't anticipate any holes for that. The same with epic drama, where we would have seen some returning series in Q1. Some of those actually had been cancelled. So we already knew we had to replace those franchises. So we've identified other franchises for subsequent seasons of some library franchises that we've already had in our inventory. So we've just secured more of those. It's worked so far, and we are keeping a close eye, because it's not to say that we're not going to see any shifts in what we've secured. We're in constant touch with our distributors and producers, keeping an eye on how they're getting on with production. Things are opening up now, because we were quite far advanced in some of those franchises where they'd almost delivered or were in post-production. We've managed to slot those in. So, and we're always on the lookout. We're very fortunate in that we've got a really established team with good relationships with distributors and producers. So as soon as, we work on a monthly basis, we have a monthly cycle of editorial process and approval process. So each month we're constantly analysing and looking at potential gaps in our schedules on stuff that we've secured. So if we anticipate any of those gaps, then we can react quickly. And because we buy so far in advance, we can approach our partners and say, actually, can we pull something together? And we can turn things around pretty quickly in that respect. We are being very reactive. We can do that because of our partnerships and because of an established team and established processes, I believe.
Okay. Nicola, your story of the week is the other biggest story, really, of the last 7 days, which is the completion of Banijay's $2.2 billion takeover of Endemol Shine Group, which is creating the world's biggest indie. As a distributor, how does that feel? What's your reaction to that?
The best that could happen to us.
Right.
Might sound a bit surprising.
Okay, how so?
Because they will not be able to handle this huge catalog and distribute all this series. It's too big, basically. How on earth can they take care of all these series? They will, of course, prioritize the best titles, and all the rest will just be at the back of the catalog. It will create space for us, I think, and so it's basically good news.
When you say about space, is that so? There's 80,000 hours of assets within this new combined group. Yeah. Are you saying that the content that isn't getting the attention will start to come back onto the market again and look for other distribution partners? Or
exactly, because we've already seen that. We are in contact with other Banijay companies or other companies within big groups that approach us, and they are very frustrated because they see that they feel that their product is not getting the attention that they need, especially from smaller countries or from mid-sized countries. And of course, they want to sell the Harry Potters, the big franchises firsthand, because that's where the money is, and all the rest of it, it's much harder for them to take care of properly. So and already now we actually we distribute a lot of series from the super indies, because after having been approached from their producers saying, we don't want you to distribute our series, we want Eccho rights to it because they will take better care of it.
So you think it's an opportunity for boutique distributors, if you like, to really specialize in their niche?
Yeah, you can say it that way. Yes.
Some of the brands involved in this new merged group it's astonishing. You look at Big Brother, Peaky Blinders, Black Mirror, MasterChef. The biggest TV brands in the world. Do you see any other developments coming through with that such a huge group?
Yes.
Now being center stage?
Yes, I think there will be some offloads of creative people, because the merger will some people will be they will seek other opportunities. I think not everybody feels at home in this kind of big corporate play, It's basically a financial thing, what they're doing. I mean, I suppose they are doing this because they want to put the whole group onto the stock market. In that context, being a producer, you want to tell good stories. You want to create content. You don't really care about the financial part of the business. But I think the cultural is not the best for creativity, actually.
So there may be some rationalization when it comes to creative talent.
Exactly. I remember, for instance, one producer, there was a question to one Israeli producer, and they asked him, why are Israelis series so good? Why are, how come? And he said, because we don't have any money.
Right.
And there is something there. I'm not saying it's the whole truth, but there is something there. Creativity is not about money. It's about the willing to tell stories. And I think maybe the best breeding ground for good creativity is within perhaps more agile, smaller groups that are, picking up this, sniffing around what is going on in society and things like that. So I think it will create opportunities. Yes.
All right. So overall, good news on many fronts, opportunities, and not only distribution, but in terms of creative people and the industry as a whole. Now it's that time of the show that we get to nominate your hero of the week and who or what you're going to be telling to get in the bin. Seniha, we're going to come to you first. Who's your hero? Who or what is your hero of the week?
It has to be the small businesses in my community, because it's been heartwarming to see how they've adapted to lockdown. Many of them have very quickly turned their restaurants into either takeaway coffee places or have provided food as takeaway. And actually, I think during this period where we've all craved some normality, being able to go through take our daily exercise in the park and grab a coffee from them just to be able to support them, but also just feel like you were doing something normal, has been quite nice. And it's been really nice to see how eager they were and how diligent they were in the processes they've put in place since the lockdown has been lifted over the weekend, and have opened their doors, under safer circumstances. And I do really admire them. I think it's going to be a difficult and long road for most, even with the help the government is offering. They are at the heart of the community and they do hold it together. So I think they are the heroes, and I do wish them lots of luck.
Absolutely. And maybe the content industry can learn a little bit about that, being able to pivot and be a little bit entrepreneurial, when the proverbial hits the fan, which it has done over the last few months. Nicola, who's your hero of the week?
Yesterday, I met a producer and scriptwriter and documentary director called Mark Hammond. And he's today on his way to Moria, which is the refugee camp in the Greek archipelago, which is described as hell on earth, to make a documentary there about the kids there. And that was so touching, and I wish him all the best. These kids, they don't have parents anymore. They don't, there's hardly any running water, there's no electricity. They have no hope at all. And they are, the suicide rate is alarming. And he's going there with one of these trauma psychiatrists to try and speak to them and see, what they can do. And for instance, he wanted to create to make a football match there with some of the kids. And they were so happy that for the first time they could play football. But then one said, no, it's not possible. And he asked, why not? We don't have a football. I mean, this is so tragic. And I think we should not forget these kids. And I think he's a hero who is going to tell the world about this.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing that. That sounds like a story that very much needs to be told.
I think so.
And I think, our general awareness of refugees has perhaps sunk into the background for the last few months when we're all dealing with our own issues. But it's very worthwhile thinking about, those people are in that terrible situation. So, yeah. Okay. So Mark Hammond, we'll look out for his film when that comes out.
Yep.
Seniha, who or what are you telling to get in the bin?
unsurprisingly, confused messaging in the recent lifting the lockdown without wanting to really rant about this whole thing. We've gone from a nation of talking about the weather all the time to talking about COVID and government's handling of it. But I do think that, it's contributed a lot to people not listening or not carrying out the guidelines, because I just think it's just been really confused. And in some cases, it's very irrational. So we just needed some clear guidelines, and I think everyone would have listened. Whereas I think by now, everyone's just so fed up. They're just doing whatever they think is the right thing to do. And in some cases, it's not. So I think it's just created more confusion. And I think we've just lost credibility as a nation, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely, everybody can agree that mixed messaging has been, central to the government's policy over the last few months. Nicola, how about you? Who are you chucking in the bin?
I'm not chucking one person, but several persons, and it's all these authoritarian leaders that are now taking over the world. It scares really me a lot. I think they are trying to control their own people. They're trying to control people, the geopolitics, and putting arms everywhere, and it scares me basically. And I'm afraid we'll see a lot of more armed conflicts in the world if we don't stop them. So we should help. Everybody should do the best to keep up human rights and everything, which is so important for our well-being and for the whole world as a whole.
Yeah. Protect our democracy, I guess, and
exactly,
and use that to make a positive route forward. Yeah, I can wholeheartedly agree with that. Nicola, Seniha, it's been great having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me. Seniha from London and Nicola in the south of Italy. Thank you again for interrupting your holiday to join us. And I hope to see you both very, very soon along the way.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the invitation.
The same. Thank you so much for the invitation. It was great to be here. Thank you, Justin.
So once again, after a break last week, it's time to go over to LA and speak to Peter White from Deadline. How are you doing, Peter?
Hey, Justin. How are you?
I'm very well. We missed you last week.
I was deep in the Emmy FYC tank. It's Emmy nominations week here, which my first time being involved in that, and it's a pretty hectic parade. So it was a busy time. But you were making news of your own, Justin, with Loreen and MIPCOM, so you didn't need me to tell you what was going on over here.
Well, it was a busy news week for us, which was great. We're delighted about that, obviously. What we didn't get to talk about was what's going on in LA.
So things are starting to reopen. The mixed messaging over what is reopening and what isn't as COVID numbers continue to rise, but it doesn't really seem to have hit TV's plans yet. One of the most interesting examples was America's Got Talent, which was sort of thought to be the first big show to get back to work. They filmed out in the Simi Valley in California. They had this huge, they looked at it like a drive-in movie theater. And it was all socially distanced. All of the stars and judges and hosts came out in these big cars, and they filmed it in this way that was socially distanced. So they had these production pods. Everyone used their own microphones. There wasn't people passing things back and forward. They had masks, which has become a political issue here, it seems. But it was really interesting. They did this episode for Judge Cuts, which was the episode after the auditions, and it seemed to have gone really well. I spoke to Simon Cowell last week about it, and he was really buzzing on it. He said, for him, it actually allowed them to freshen up the format. The show's obviously been going on for many years, and he said they had to think a bit differently. So there was a bit of the show that he didn't really like. He didn't really like that middle bit of America's Got Talent, and he said it allowed them to do something a bit new. So we haven't seen it on the telly yet. I haven't watched it. It's coming out at the end of July, but that was a really great example of NBC and Fremantle getting back to business. So I think a lot of shows and a lot of people I spoke to over the last week or so are using that maybe as a bit of a template.
Yeah.
And then there's a few other things that are coming about. Big Brother is always mentioned, largely given the way that the show acts, is a lot of people talk about it being quarantine TV anyway. the CBS version. They've started production on The House, which is filmed out here on the CBS lot in LA in Studio City. So they're starting to build that. I've been told that everyone working on it is wearing PPE and health and safety protocols. They haven't announced a film date or an air date, but they're getting moving, which I guess is a good start, because that's the thing people want to see where they can get to with this. And then some of the late night hosts are making some moves. They were obviously some of the first to start making their shows from home. Conan on Monday night was the first to leave his house and film. He actually filmed it from Largo, which is a comedy club out here. I think in part because he said he wanted to support the theatre. It was a place that he used to do improv. But also, I think he was bored from filming from home and he was restless and he wanted to get back. And it was a bit of a middle ground before, he eventually goes back to the studio in Burbank. Bill Maher seemingly is on break at the moment. They do. Many of these guys have a summer break, and his runs out at the end of July, and they're hoping to get Bill back into the studio. He's evidently also fed up of filming from his back garden. So I think things like that are starting. You're starting to see a bit of movement. We'll start to see a few more, I'm sure, over the next few weeks, and that's what we're watching out for.
Yeah, and obviously LA has been, certainly some areas of LA have been tightening down that lockdown a little bit, but maybe it's the same as the UK, probably various other countries around Europe and around the rest of the world as well, where there is that mixed messaging. We don't really know how tight that lockdown is anymore.
Yeah, we hit the bars and the beaches a bit hard, and then we close some things down again. We can't go to the zoo, for instance, and I know my colleagues on the film side are having to scramble around with the movie theatres. So yeah, the information is changing almost daily. That's one of the biggest challenges for any network and any production company, is just these things move so quickly. So they'll all have plans, and they'll all have plan Bs and plan Cs and plan Ds. So that's where we are now. Who knows where we'll be when I speak to you in a week, Justin.
Yeah. They're obviously all adapting to this new way of doing things and probably learning all the time. So I hear Damian Lewis is back in the Spy Game.
Yes, yeah, he's back to where a lot of people know him from in Homeland. This is a true international co-production, both as a television series and as a story that Jake Cantor and I broke this week. It is Damian Lewis and Dominic West. Obviously, Dominic West best known for The Wire and The Affair. They are, quote unquote, in negotiations to star. I mean, we're pretty certain. I think it's just the contracts haven't been signed yet. But they're doing this Cold War spy thriller called A Spy Among Friends, which is based on Ben McIntyre's book. But interestingly, they're making it for BritBox in the UK and Spectrum Originals in the States. And both of those are, really getting into this originals game. Obviously, BritBox has only recently launched. This is really only its second original show after Spitting Image, which they announced a few months ago. But it's their first drama, which shows that, some of these titles, especially one with such big hitters like Damien and Dominic, are coming to that platform. And Spectrum is also relatively new. It's basically a cable system, Charter Communications, but they did LA's Finest, which is in his second season, and that does quite well, and it's just been sold to Fox. And then they did the Mad About You revival, so they're getting into that originals game, and this is the sort of big ticket item.
And that's a cable channel. They're actually a regular cable channel?
Yes, it's a cable channel. It's only available, and it's another peculiarity of the US market. It's only available in certain places in the country. So Spectrum and Charter isn't available across the country. So one of the things that they do is obviously target those areas that they do have it in, but they often make secondary deals with channels. So for instance, with LA's Finest, it's sold to Fox, which has nationwide coverage. So they do a few of these. It's a slightly quirky system, and I'm still getting my head around it, to be honest. But yes, in to all intents and purposes, it's a pay TV channel. It was meant to shoot later this year. It was meant to shoot in September in the UK, but who knows if that's going to go ahead. I mean, not only whether a big scripted show like that will be able to film in the UK in September, but also because Damien hasn't finished the latest season of Billions. There's still five episodes to go of that Showtime show, which obviously was put on hold by the pandemic, and whether he's got any other acting commitments that he was meant to have done before then as well. So it's a big ticket show. It's a fascinating example of Spectrum and BritBox coming together, two people that most people wouldn't have necessarily heard of or thought were in this game, and might be great for other drama producers looking to find new ways to sell shows.
No, absolutely, and it's one of these Anglo-American co-productions that we may be seeing more and more of as we go forward.
100%. I mean, this is we've been talking about US UK co-productions. It almost seems nowadays we don't write a story about a drama that doesn't have one of each on certainly on the premium side.
Fantastic. Well, great to know that you're fitting well and you're obviously worked off your feet with Emmys and FYCs and all the rest of it that's going on in LA. Thanks again for taking the time to join us this week, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, Justin. I'll come up with a new acronym for next week.
Excellent. We'll see you then.
Cheers.
So once again, it's that time in the show to head over to Riga and catch up with Girts Licis. Girts, how are you today?
Yeah, still in Riga. Still in Riga. Right.
This week, you're going to be looking east.
Yeah.
You're going to be taking us through Central and Eastern European markets and trends and developments there, right?
Yeah, I think it's a good occasion as your other guests today were a bit connected with that region as well. So I was thinking I will continue in that direction, right?
Absolutely. Well, that's I'm looking forward to this. Go for it.
So yeah, I'm just giving you some quick overview, and as I think a lot of particularly Western distributors and also producers are quite fascinated by that side of the world, but at the same time still not feeling as comfortable in dealing with them as they should be. And I think the biggest mistake someone could make approaching any of these territories is treating them as non-equal or less experienced or less developed due to the past political regimes, like markets in need to be shown how high-quality television is made. This is totally wrong, full stop. Because despite all the ideological nonsense of the communism era, being stranded behind the so-called Iron Curtain for many decades, while the technical resources in those times were probably a few steps behind the West, to say the least, the creativity and professionalism in television and film industries, including ideas, script writing, directing, camera, and so on, in most of these countries have always been on a very, very high level and still is. And particularly in some smaller markets, the budgets can be still shockingly small at times compared to Western standards, but this is compensated by professionalism and multitasking, and in most cases, super high efficiency of productions and production teams. And the technical facilities have been raised to the highest standards by now as well, of course. Therefore, CEE is increasingly being chosen as a filming location for some of the biggest international productions. I think that countries like Hungary and Czech Republic probably have been leading the way, but we see a lot of international productions going on also in smaller markets, from Estonia and Lithuania in the north to Croatia and Bulgaria in the south. Game of Thrones, The Witcher, The Sleepers, Chernobyl, movies including the latest Star Wars, Terminator, or Spider-Man have all been at least partially filmed in this part of the world. And I think that besides all I already mentioned, as well as endless opportunities for recreating different urban and rural sceneries and hefty tax incentives provided by the local governments, another thing that increasingly attracts the productions is highly professional, but in many cases more flexible workforce than in the West, as there are much less rules and limitations set by different unions or other regulators, and pretty much everyone is prepared to work long shifts without looking at the watch if the work needs to be done, as long as they are getting paid for their hard work and just not taken advantage, of course.
And so how appealing is Central and Eastern Europe for production and format distributors?
As in many other places, local productions are increasingly pushing out the foreign-produced shows, especially from the prime time. And the bigger producers and platforms can increasingly approach deal negotiations with a strong leverage. But at the same time, there is a space for everyone, and good programming is well recognized and appreciated. And when it comes to adaptations of international formats, CE is, I think, a particularly interesting market. Over the last decade, that's where many non-scripted formats have started to fly outside of their home markets. From Danish Married at First Sight, which became an instant success in several territories, to the Korean I Can See Your Voice, which saw its first adaptation outside Asia in Bulgaria, with ratings then beating those of The Voice and X Factor. And it also needs to be noted that unlike some other European markets, this region is more open-minded in terms of where they are looking for trends, new ideas and formats. And while the UK and US are on their radar, of course, these are by no means the only trendsetters from the CE's perspective. And such territories as Germany, Italy, or Spain, or even Turkey and Korea are perhaps even more closely watched than some of the Western neighbors. And when talking about scripted formats, Ukraine and particularly Russia have been some of the biggest buyers and adapters in the world so far. And I have often been asked why. And again, I want to stress that it has very little to do with a possible shortage of local creativity, in my opinion. Yes, there is a larger population and a broad appetite to all kinds of shows to be satisfied, from limited series to telenovelas. But I think that another reason is that international distributors very early realized this tremendous, also commercial potential of the Russian-speaking market, its size and how much money there is, and how willing to spend this money they are. So they started to push their formats there, and all the big ones established local offices or even joint ventures that include production entities, like Sony, for instance, I think is there since mid-90s already. And obviously they have been always pushing their own IP in the first place. And particularly at the earlier years, when for Russians it was also quite important to get recognized in the West and to show their own people how advanced like the West they are, which I think had something to do with some complexes of the past when it was that closed communist society. So I think to some extent it's also been a certain way to show off, like having the latest Mercedes or something, that if there is a big successful show somewhere in the West, I mean successful and big as a brand, they needed it too, perhaps even unconsciously. But that said, I think that the more success they will start to get internationally with their own IP, the less they will depend on international formats in the future.
You think the sales of programming produced in CEE and original formats developed there are going to grow internationally?
I think there is definitely a room for growth in this area. What we have seen a bit less so far, possibly, is the ideas and formats coming out of the CE and taking over the international markets, particularly because these countries perhaps have not been marketing themselves enough as creative hotspots, focusing more on serving their local audiences. But I think this is slightly changing as well. Particularly Ukraine is trying to become the kind of South Korea of the Eastern European region in terms of creating this buzz around their formats and productions. They have also been raising the awareness of Ukraine in particular by organizing the annual Kyiv Media Week, which is one of the most established trade events in the region currently, along with NetP Budapest and New Europe Market in Croatia. And probably the best traveling European series so far is The Sniffer, which you may have heard of, which is a crime series featuring a private detective with an extraordinary sense of smell, able to detect things about you that you desperately want to conceal. And Sniffer has been sold by a distributor called Film UA pretty much all around the world, with format also picked up in countries like France and Japan. And co-productions are also a good way to raise the awareness about local creativity. And now, since the mantra that good stories may come from anywhere in the world has become so famous, big international distributors are also increasingly eyeing these countries, trying to spot titles that could make a good addition to their catalogs, particularly but not exclusively on the scripted side of the business. Beta Film, ZDF, CBS, Eccho rights are just some of the distributors offering shows and formats created in CE. And recently, we also see the growth of local distributors, such as the Film UA in Ukraine, which I already mentioned, as well as NTV and a few other Russian distributors. The Polish TVN is also gaining attraction, particularly in recent years, since the TVN group has become a part of Liberty Global.
So how's the current situation been impacting the Central and Eastern European markets?
Well, if we are speaking of what is this COVID and what's hopefully going to be the post-COVID months, CE has been among the first in the world to reopen to production and preparing for the TV fall season. And most of these countries have been fortunate enough to be less hit by the virus than other parts of the world. It seems like a timely lockdown enforced by the governments, particularly in regards to traveling in and out of these countries, and also the local culture of people being more I would say, disciplined and perhaps less questioning restrictions to their democratic rights when it is for a common good. And in many cases, also a lower density of population than in the West have all been among the beneficial factors, probably. So big shows like The Voice, Dancing with the Stars, MasterChef, The Masked Singer, The Farm, Ninja Warrior, Love Island, Your Face Sounds Familiar, I Love My Country, and many, many others are currently in pre-production in various territories. And now when so many film and TV makers are looking for safer spots for their international productions that could offer highly professional multilingual crews and the best value for money, Central Eastern European countries should definitely also be high on their priority list, I think.
Fascinating, Girts. And obviously you were a producer as well as being on-screen talent. As we mentioned earlier on, your opinions on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in Latvia. So that's a really good insight from your experience as well, from a production perspective. I mean, do you see the region really starting to perhaps live up to its potential in the coming years?
Perhaps what we have been lacking a little bit here in this region is the confidence. Like if we had the British confidence, for instance, we probably could do much more. But I think this is changing, and the more there will be these success stories, the more we will see good big projects coming out of here.
And then the more, as you say, the more distribution of CEE developed formats, the more the region starts to get a better reputation globally. That's only going to help.
Exactly, that we are not just a very good professional workforce, but also creative.
I've never been to the region myself, other than, I mean, if you count Poland, I've been to Poland, but I've never been to Russia, never been to Latvia. Perhaps when the lockdown's over, you'll invite me over to Riga.
Also, if I will be still here, we'll see.
Okay. Well, I'll see you. We'll probably pass each other on the plane.
Yeah. I will leave my keys for you somewhere here.
Excellent. That's exactly what I need, a getaway. Girts, thank you as ever. Really interesting hearing about Central and Eastern Europe. Thank you again. And we look forward to catching up with you next week.
Exactly. See you next week.
Well, we've reached the end of another week's show. Thanks as always for listening. As ever, please rate and subscribe to the show and share it with friends and colleagues. If you want to hear about our advertising and sponsorship packages, please email justin@boomdialogue.com. That's justin@boomdialogue.com. TellyCast was edited by Ian Chambers. We'll be back with another show next week. So in the meantime, stay safe.
Are you tired of the same old streaming options? Introducing Myco, the revolutionary Web3 content platform where you can not only watch films, TV shows, user-generated content, live events, and listen to podcasts, but earn from them too. Myco commissions and produces content that connects and empowers both viewers and creators in a fully decentralized video ecosystem. With live monetization, crowdfunding, NFT gating, and even the opportunity for fractional ownership of content, Myco is changing the game. Myco. Join the conversation and start earning today. Download the app from the Apple and Google Play app stores.